Have you ever wondered why Idaho is famous for potatoes? Sometimes it's not about what the product is, but the way it's marketed and distributed. Although, side note, I am from Idaho and we really do have the best potatoes anywhere, and I will fight you on that. Welcome to Lost Sparks History. Today's episode is about a man whose name you may not recognize, but whose impact you've almost certainly tasted. This is the story of J.R. Simplot, the Spud King of Idaho, a self-made billionaire who revolutionized modern agriculture and changed the way the world eats. So because I grew up in Idaho, I always knew about Simplot. My brother even works at the company today, and yet I never really knew his story. Born in 1909 in Dubuque, Iowa, and raised on a farm in Declo, Idaho, John Richard Simplot didn't come from wealth. In fact, following a disagreement with his father, he dropped out of school in the 8th grade at just 14 years old. But what he lacked in formal education, he made up for it in sheer hustle. In this era, local governments or school districts sometimes couldn't pay their teachers in cash. So instead, they would give them what they call scrip, basically an IOU note or voucher promising they'd pay them later, with added interest. Simplot kind of took advantage of this situation. He spent his early teens staying at a boarding house and buying interest-bearing scrip from local teachers who needed the cash immediately, effectively acting as a teenage bank for them. He used that capital to buy his first hogs, and eventually he moved into the potato business. By the time World War II broke out, Simplot was already a successful potato sorter. But the war provided a massive opportunity for him. Simplot saw that the US military needed food that was light, shelf-stable, and easy to transport. But potatoes were not light, so he had to think outside of the box. He didn't just sell them raw potatoes. He became a pioneer in industrial dehydration. By the end of the war, Simplot's plants were producing 1/3 of all the dehydrated potatoes and onions consumed by American troops. This wasn't just a business win. It was a lesson in scaling food technology for a global audience. But his most famous contribution came in the early 1950s. At the time, French fries were a logistical nightmare for restaurants. If you have ever made potatoes, fried, mashed, baked, you know how long it can take. They have to be peeled, cut, fried fresh, which led to soggy, inconsistent results for restaurants. Simplot's company chemist, Ray Dunlap, perfected a process for par cooking and freezing potatoes, which is basically partially frying the potato before freezing so the starch structure stays intact. When Simplot brought these to the market in 1953, they were the first commercially viable frozen French fries. But the real turning point came in 1965. Simplot met with Ray Kroc, the man building the McDonald's empire. And I'm not going to get into how Kroc came about this role, but let's just say it was not shady. And if you want to look into it, I'll probably do a story on him someday. But Kroc was obsessed with consistency, but he was frustrated by the seasonal variation in fresh potatoes. As you know, McDonald's relies on French fries a lot. Simplot convinced Kroc that frozen was the future. By 1967, they had a handshake deal, and as McDonald's exploded across the globe, Simplot's fries became the gold standard for the fast food industry. If you've ever enjoyed a crispy, uniform fry at a drive-thru, you're tasting Simplot's legacy. Simplot's influence didn't stop at the fryer, though. To ensure his crop succeeded, he moved vertically into fertilizer production, building a massive phosphate plant in Pocatello, Idaho in 1944. He eventually became one of the largest producers of phosphate fertilizer in the world. He even looked beyond agriculture. In 1980, he provided the crucial early funding for another Idaho company, Micron Technology, helping turn the small Idaho startup into a global semiconductor giant. To tell you how important that is, if you have a phone or a computer today, you are very likely have a Micron chip in that device. J.R. Simplot passed away in 2008 at the age of 99. By then, he had spent decades as one of the wealthiest men in America. His story is a reminder that world-changing ideas often start in the most ordinary places, like a dusty field in Idaho, driven by a man who refused to see a potato as just a vegetable. Thank you for joining us today at Lost Sparks History. Let me know if you want to see a biography of anybody else who may have been overlooked by history. Don't forget to subscribe and like below, and we will see you next time.